Dear students, today we talk about the essay How Should One Read a Book by Virginia Woolf. In this essay, she elaborates her idea of reading literature and the role and the constructive role of readers in producing wonderful writers. I hope you are already familiar with the writer. Here are the list of some of her major literary works. Voyage Out was published in 1915, Mrs. Dalloway in 1925, To the Lighthouse in 1927, Orlando, a biography in 1928, The Waves in 1931. The title of the essay, How Should One Read a Book, ends with a quotation mark. Who does she ask a question? And is it possible to give any instruction on the art of reading a book? She makes it clear that she is asking the question to herself as well as the readers. And her answer is, nobody can give any instruction on reading a book. And the only advice one can give to another about reading is to take no advice, follow your own instincts, to use your own reason to come to your own conclusions, which definitely means no one can tell us how to read a book. We have to depend on our own instincts and reason. You may be wondering, then why did she give such a title to her essay? And she makes it clear in the beginning of the essay that her attempt is to give a few suggestions on reading, not to limit the independence of the reader. In the essay, she describes the role of critics and readers in producing quality literature. She also points at the significance of good readers. We all know that reading is a very subjective experience. Virginia Woolf also agreed to that, and she says, no judgment is possible in books. The spirit of freedom is quintessential to make reading a very creative process. She also says that we should not admit or allow authorities to decide whether certain books are good or bad for us. Every reader should be free to read and interpret books as per their personal choices. But the author cautions us that we should not waste this freedom. Our freedom to interpret book is very, very important, but this freedom should be judiciously, reasonably used. In order to read and understand literature, we have to train our powers to approach a book. Simply because we have the freedom to interpret a book as per our choices, we shouldn't misuse it. Every book carries its own world, dimensions, characters, and a variety of world. We should be prepared to accept the world of literature as its own. So the first thing about reading a book is to have an inclusive strategy to cater to the plurality of the text. There are different sorts of writers, experiences, narrative methods, and we should be able to accommodate all the plurality of the text. A library is a curious place. It has books written in all languages by men and women of all tempers, races, and ages. And all these works are accommodated into a single place. There are novels, poems, histories, memoirs, dictionaries, and blue books. Just like human beings, books too have classes. There are fiction, biography, poetry. We should separate them and take from each what it is right that it should give us. The author asks us to frame a strategy in which we are able to accept all forms of writing, and we expect the right thing from those books. How should we read a book then? It is important that we are reading books from our personal point of view. It is also significant that we have the freedom to read and interpret literature in our perspective. At the same time, the world of literature is so diverse. It has so many classes, it has so many categories, it has so many nationalities. So how can we get the best of all the books? In order to do that, Woolf suggests two things. Number one, banish all preconceptions when we read. We are not able to enter into literature because we are prejudiced about the author or the nationality or the class. The second one that she suggests is, do not dictate to your author. Do not say that the author should write like that, author should write like this. Instead, try to become him, be his fellow worker and accomplice. Our attitude to the author is very important. If we are sensitive to the kind of subjects that the author is writing, we will get the best of books. We all know that criticizing a work is a part of reading. But the author says, do not criticize at first. It may prevent us from getting the fullest possible value from what we read. The second point is, open your mind as wide as possible. It will bring you into the presence of a human being unlike any other. If we are prejudiced about the author, if we have certain type of expectation from an author, then we often fail to see what the author is worth. This is very much true about human beings. When we are getting familiar with a person, if we are prejudiced about their gender, class, caste, race, something, then we won't be able to appreciate the human being. According to the author, if we can follow the four conditions, number one, banish our preconceptions. Number two, do not dictate to the author. Number three, do not criticize at first. Number four, or keep our heart open. Then we will find that the author is giving us or attempting to give us something far more definite. So in order to get the best of an author, we have to keep all these four ideas in our mind. Just like a building is constructed by placing brick over brick, chapters of a novel is an attempt to construct something like a building. And readers have to pursue patiently the way an author is constructing his or her own world. According to Virginia Woolf, the quickest way to understand the elements of what a novelist is doing is not to read, but to write, to make our own experiment with the dangers and difficulties of words. Many of us do not appreciate writers and their works because we do not exactly know what goes into writing, how writers write books. So she suggests that once we try to write our own experience and see how words are forming our ideas, we will appreciate the pain of creating a book. When we try to put our experience into words, we will understand writing is a very difficult task. For example, you might have read a lot of love poems, but once you are in love and you want to write this experience into a poem or into a short story or any other forms of literature, you understand that putting an experience into words is very, very complex. So the author suggests that once we are writing, we will find that it breaks into 1,000 conflicting impressions. We won't be able to put our experience exactly into words. Some must be subdued. Some part of our experience will be subdued and silenced. Others will be emphasized. And in the process, we lose our grasp on that emotion. We will be sincere critics only when we understand what goes into writing a book. Once we have experimented with writing and we understand what happens to an emotion once it is put into words, it is the right time for us to turn from our writing to the opening pages of some great novelists like Daniel Defoe, Jane Austen, or Thomas Hardy. Now, we will be better able to appreciate the mastery of these writers.